Welcome to the Lost Signals Reviews, the American Film Institute's Top 100, where we critique the supposed 100 greatest American movies of all time. Join us as we decide if they're worthy of the Mott's Top 100.
Or Mott's. When I was a child, I wanted to be Indiana Jones. He was a hero. When I watched it as an adult, I realized I really want to be Salah.
He's the real hero.
But he has the best life of all of them.
Yeah.
I imagine that I've been Belloc all along, but that's not quite true, because I'm probably Marcus Brody.
Getting lost in your own museum.
This is the Lost Signals Reviews, the AFI Top 100, with number 66, Raiders of the Lost Ark. I'm Jonathan Ian Manzer, here with Stephen Ramosi.
How are you?
And Scott Thiller.
And I'm okay with snakes.
Scott, would you like to give the funny log line?
Yeah, so I think we agreed upon great adventures in grave robbing, pretty much.
All right, and Stephen, onto you with the plot.
All right, so Raiders of the Lost Ark follows a archaeology professor who gets a little too into his work, who for some reason is tapped by the U.S. government to go find the Ark of the Covenant.
He's the expert.
So he chases down a bunch of Nazis, or actually, he goes and finds the site where they are looking for the Ark. A bunch of Nazis are already there trying to dig it up.
In tennis.
Yeah, in tennis.
Mm-hmm.
And he uses his super archaeology skills to find the actual site, which no one else has found. Digs up the Ark, pulls it up. Nazis steal it from him. He goes on a trek across oceans and deserts to get it back. Finally, through no skill of his own,
Mostly through bumbling and luck.
He finds where it is. The Nazis catch him anyway. Tie him to a post. And then they open the Ark and undo all of themselves. So, I think that's a pretty quick and dirty assessment of what happens in this movie.
Sure.
I was gonna go on a little bit. I like the plot of this film. I don't like it as much as I used to.
Yes.
And thought that I was going to. It's been a few years since I've seen it, and I always liked this movie, and I still do. It's just not what my memory made it out to be.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying, and I mostly agree.
There's a lot of like.
Some of the veneer shows thin upon this viewing.
And I think that Spielberg does a little better in mostly Last Crusade.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's something about this plot that feels a little looser than I remember it being, and a little less
put together,
well constructed than I remember it being. But overall, I still like it just fine. It's just not what I thought it was going to be.
This is a dumb movie. But it's a dumb movie crafted by smart people. So there's an inherent logic to it, but it's and it's in a way someone who it is Marcus Brody movie in a way that it's someone who vaguely knows what they're talking about, and if you don't know enough, it sounds like they know what they're talking about. But the more you learn in life, it's like, no, there's a lot wrong with what's going on in here.
Leaving a lot out, dude. Yeah.
I understand the government's motivation. Of course they're not going to fund this, because it's a stupid idea. Yeah, the Nazis are going after the Ark of the Covenant. Great. There's greater dangers in the world that the government, or they think of it as hocus pocus nonsense. So of course they sent out some random academic to go see if they can find out where it is.
Yeah.
But it's inherently a silly film, but not in a Monty Python silly way. It's because it takes itself seriously. It's
to some extent.
Well, yeah, they do play gags and things like that, but it's not winking at you. It's silly. It's sort of It's a couple steps above a Leslie Nielsen film in a weird way.
I mean, in retrospect, yeah, like I largely agree. So allow me to jump in just real quickly. I'm looking at a 2 for score because I think I said this while we're watching it. And I'll take a page from you. E. It's like a pulp, like dime novel as a movie, pretty much. So like that's what they're going for. That's what the whole angle on it is. So that's how they're playing it, and it works within that, range for sure. It's just that, as you guys said, and I agree, some of it isn't as I don't want to say coherent. It's just not as cool or / good, for lack of like better descriptors, upon watching it now than it was in our youthful memories, we'll say. But I still think it holds together fine enough. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just not trying to be complicated. It's trying to be like I said, a dime store adventure, like pulp story. So
yeah, it kind of washes over some of the parts that don't necessarily make a ton of sense.
Sure.
And I don't know. I think I'll probably give it a 2 as well. It's good enough for that for me, but it's not a 3.
It's a perfectly fine solid 2.
So the Uncharted games, I always thought were kind of cheap ripoffs of the Indiana Jones films. And I realized that's not particularly the case. It's actually more in line with what they are. I thought it was really cool when I was a kid. Now as an adult, I'm like,
it's fine.
It's fine.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I agree with the 2 on that.
Yeah, I think the consensus there and makes sense.
So I'm on to themes then.
Good luck.
Nazis are bad.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank
Big
you.
theme. Big mood.
So there's a huge theme of archaeology here, but it's a very surface level. As I pointed out, like, look at it. I mean, we're not the first people to say that Indiana Jones is a terrible archaeologist.
Yeah.
But he's not supposed to be. He's an action hero.
And a worse professor.
Yeah. He just left his class in the middle. Like,
He always does
Marcus
that.
Brody's going to take over that class? No way. I don't know. It's again, it's a dumb movie made by smart people. And I don't think they're trying to say anything besides let's have an adventure. And it works out that way, but it's not like substantive.
Yeah, no, I agree. I was going to say that almost very same thing. The point of it is not to have some kind of message or like, impart some kind of lesson or anything. It's like, hey, enjoy a cool adventure story in the desert, a globe-trotting treasure hunt, essentially. So yeah, it's not like it's bad because of that, but it does, I would say, lack thematic elements that enough for a 1 here. So it's just a default 0 in my mind. So what do you think, Steve-O? Once you got
There
something.
there's this underlying theme of like there's conflicting themes, I think. So there's the one of like Indiana Jones is like can just go and take whatever he wants from any native people anywhere, and he's justified under the guise of like archaeology and I guess
for science
to a degree. And then there's the theme of like if you don't leave well enough alone, terrible things are going to happen to you, which I think runs throughout the whole Indiana Jones series. Which I think is the main thing that they wanted to touch on, not necessarily that, you're going to get blasted by magic if you, but like, there are certain things that you shouldn't go looking for lest you look into the abyss too long or whatever, and I think that is the big one in this.
I will agree with you, but it's not. It's a leftover of like the kind of horror films we did for Matsumi in this, which like The Mummy, which is there are certain things that we don't know. But here, it's actually a lot of stuff is more technology advanced as opposed to supernatural, even though they do have a major supernatural element to this. But like, I take away that it turns out Burmese people were excellent engineers that created complex traps that somehow they fed all of those snakes in the Well of Souls for...
no, the snakes should just go in and out.
Well, the snakes just got there naturally.
They could just go in and out.
It doesn't actually matter, but...
and that's the thing. None of it actually matters. So I'm going to give it a fairly strong 0.
I'm going with a pun you might like, Steve-O. Whatever thematic elements it does have is an artifact, if you will, from, as you mentioned, the older movies. It's not, I don't think it's intentionally built into it. So like, you might be able to pull some stuff out, but I'm sticking with a solid 0 as well.
I think it is intentionally built in. However, I'm not sure it's
enough,
strongly enough, pointed out in this movie to give it a 1. So, like, they could have done a lot with that. They could have done a lot with talking about the people that actually lived in the places that Indiana Jones was plundering, and that would have been an interesting theme, or like at least like going a little more in depth with that. But
and destroying their aqueducts.
Yeah,
yes, fucking up their towns,
all their
and stuff.
shit.
Yeah,
but I don't think that this movie is trying to look too deeply into that, and it's not like a huge flaw of the movie to me, but I don't think it's strong enough for a 1.
It's just defaultly, I think we agree upon this.
Okay, Scott, on to you with the antagonist.
Nazis are bad. So, like, I mean, they've always, like, aside from the main 3 trilogy, of course, they're always there, and they're always going to be doing their Nazi thing, trying to find the occult artifact du jour.
Yeah, they went after the communists in the 4th one.
Yeah, well, as I said. But anyway, so as personified by Heydrich, like, he's, like, of course, the most card-carrying / mustache-twirling villain, even though he lacks a mustache. But he's so over the top. But it's because, as I said, it's a pulp story, so you have to have like that pulp kind of menacing villain, and it's the henchman. Yeah. And then you also have Bellic, of course, who is like sort of the more mercenary. Like he literally says to Jones, "I'm your dark shadow," or like your dark reflection, or something like that. Right? He just tells him outright, like,
"Yeah, I'm the evil version of you."
Yeah, we got it. Like I understand, film, but he's a charismatic sort of figure. Yeah. I mean, he's like menacingly charming. He's like the civilized villain, if you will, versus like the brute force. So I think they sort of share responsibilities, and I think they work. Like, if it didn't work, it wouldn't be the adventure tale that it is. So I don't remember the actor's name, but whoever plays Bellic does a good job. He still holds up as a memorable and effective villain, I think, in this tale. And then as supported by, of course, the Nazi regiment that was dispatched to oversee him / coerce him into helping them dig up the Ark. So I think they all perfectly work fine. And they fit in again within the genre, within the archetypes that they have to play. So,
yeah, I completely agree. I think that the Nazis work well as a villain, as usual. And I like Bellic as a person, like as a guy having his own agenda outside of them. And I thought that he worked well. It was like an interesting.
They're like shaky allies.
His scene with Marion, was interesting to see, like him let loose and like get drunk and knowing he's still like everything's in control. Yeah. But yeah, I think that they did a good job in terms of antagonists in this film. Well,
it's an action movie in a lot of senses, even more so than I used to give it credit for. Yeah. I mean, so they have the Nazis as the characters you don't have no sympathy for, and you can watch Indiana Jones slaughter them, push them off of cliffs, all that, and
just laugh.
You feel no guilt or remorse for their deaths.
Yeah.
But you have Belloc, who is charming, as you just mentioned. He is a good foil for Indiana Jones, and he plays the game differently, but it's the same game they're playing.
Exactly.
So he's someone that you're not rooting for, but someone you can see, oh, he actually is a threat intellectually to Indiana Jones, which makes it, again, that combination of the mooks that can be slaughtered and the intelligence.
The Faceless Army, and then him. Yeah.
And then you have I forget the one, the really creepy
Heydrich,
I
believe.
Yeah, he's the one Nazi there, the monster that you think of as the Nazis.
Yeah, as personified by him, exactly. Yeah, so they're all pretty well effective, like I said, and giving them a pretty solid one.
All right. Steven, talk about the protagonist or Indiana Jones, one or the other.
Indiana Jones is in my eyes, the obvious protagonist of this movie. And I guess we'll hear something else. He is Indiana Jones. He's good. It's Harrison Ford
in his prime.
Yeah, in his prime, being a charming,
smarmy
son of a bitch,
anti-hero.
And whatever. He plays the role well. He fills the role well, and that's why this was. He's a large reason it was such a popular movie. I think that this might be the most Harrison Ford.
Yeah, I see. I know what you mean.
That we see of Harrison. Like, this might be, when you think of Harrison Ford, this
it's like quintessentially him. Yeah,
this is kind of who he is, and
rogue.
In terms of that, I liked him a lot in this one. I don't have too much to say about it. He's Indiana Jones. If you've never seen an Indiana Jones movie, you're not going to know what I'm talking about. But if you have, which you probably should have to be listening to this review, You know exactly what I mean. He's that character.
I weirdly disagree with you. I'm going to reference Red Letter Media here.
Okay.
The silhouette of Indiana Jones is more important necessarily than Harrison Ford. And that the one problem with Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was it was an older Indiana Jones. And no one wants to see that. It's, in a sense, he's not a blank face, but he's a symbol of virility and action. And you don't want to see action heroes who are they need to be vulnerable, but you don't want to see them that vulnerable. So I think that the whip, the hat,
and the gun,
the gun and the silhouette are what Indiana Jones is and should be more. It's a lot like Batman in a sense that you shuffle them, not these the actors attached to them, but
behind this mask is more than a man, it's an idea.
The symbol is more important for that.
Sure. So
I think that the symbol was born here, and it lasted for 2 other good movies and still resonates in our culture.
That's pretty much what I was going to say. Like, yeah, it's part of the cultural zeitgeist at this point. Like, almost nobody would not know who Indiana Jones is if you mentioned that, as you sort of mentioned. And yeah, like, this is the one film in the franchise that happens to be on the AFI list, so it's good enough for that. I don't disagree, maybe about the placement. But as a character, I think that is a good point, and that rather, I remember, I think I saw that same little bit or special about it, where, like, the idea of him is sort of more important than the man himself, in a sense. So, like, that's, if you call that the protagonist, I still think it's effective. But I still think at the same time, like, Harrison Ford does a good job, like you said, put him on the map. I don't know who, like, if someone else was cast, it would have obviously changed. And like,
that's what I was just going to say. Do you think if they put Mark Hamill in this role back in the day, it would have been as well received?
No, but I think that it's a symbol that could be passed down. Versus a
necessarily having to be him. In person. Yeah, I get you. But I still think it's effective, of course. Like, I mean, the adventure stories like this are built around the charming roguish hero, and as such, he does a good job of being that, and as symbolized by like his accoutrements, if you will. So yeah, solid one.
All right.
So yeah, yes, I agree that this wouldn't have worked. Harrison Ford's perhaps the best ever that would ever play this. But hopefully in the future we'll get to see newer movies that deal with a different character leading it.
Sure.
Or actor leading it.
Shia LaBeouf,
Chris Pratt. I thought we were bouncing on that idea back in.
Yeah, Chris Pratt, I think would make an excellent.
Yeah, I think he could be the heir to the Harrison Ford style of action hero, if you will. Yeah. Anyway,
all right, on to supporting with me. So I'm going to talk about 2 and then pass it off to everyone else. If there are, I'm sorry. So Sala,
your favorite dude ever.
I love genre studies. I grew up on Sliders.
Delicious.
This is a lot more racist of a portrayal than I remembered it being. It was almost like if I decided to play it's weird. He switched between Arab and Indian kind of accents, and it felt like a bad racist joke. And Indiana Jones does that, like especially in Temple of Doom. Anyway, man, Marion Ravenwood, I think, did a fantastic job in this. She was perhaps a 2-dimensional character she wasn't just the damsel in distress that we would see in Willie Scott later.
Although she was put in those situations.
She was. But she could handle her own for a lot.
Exactly.
So there's a scene that didn't quite work but I think it could have worked really well. They established that she can drink and hold her own. So she decides to attempt to outdrink Bellick, and it turns out that he grew up on whatever booze that they were drinking at the time, and held his own against her, and she was beaten by him. And it didn't quite work for me, but I understand what they were going for.
It was a fine subversion.
But the fact that she was attempting on her own to escape using her talents and skills, I like that, and I think overall she can throw a punch. It worked for me. So
yeah, I mean, like they gave her. Like you said, like action-y parts. Like, even her introduction is setting her up to be pretty badass. Yeah. It's like, it's not, again, like you said, it's not she was like, help me the whole time, although there were parts of that for sure. But I think they shared, in beating the villains, if you will, to various degrees. And yeah, like, she's always been pretty solid, in my mind, like in my memory. Like, this is a quick personal story, but a friend of ours likes to say that it was the first woman actress he saw on screen that like had a crush on, essentially. But yeah, she does a good job. She's a good, X-fling of indies. Like that angle is there. And yes, I know you both like Sal. He's always been good. I think I like him more in Last Crusade, but he's perfectly fine here too. He's a great character. He's like, and I always mention Brody. I like him, like the bumbling, like,
Yeah.
Indy, we need to go to get to whatever.
He's less bumbling in this one than he is in the
He
Last
actually
Crusade.
seems somewhat confident here. Like, he becomes more farcical later on, but he's perfectly fine. And yeah, man, like all the random henchmen, like don't really have names, but they're still effective. But certainly those are the two main ones, and I think they do a perfectly fine job. Like you said, John Rice Davies was and still is pretty fucking awesome at everything. Even though, like, yes, you can sort of be like, it's a little cringy, be like, that's a little racist there, but I don't think they didn't intend that in a bad way. They weren't like trying to do that. It just comes off as such because it's been, we've moved on from.
Yes, it was a product of its time.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm giving them all collectively a solid 1, and them two being the standouts.
Yeah,
There's not many more.
There's not much more that I like. Everyone else is just under the umbrella of Nazis, I guess, or
Actually,
like the antagonists.
There's 2 more,
right?
but you go.
I'm trying to think of like other characters that I would put into this. There's the girl in his class in the beginning that has "love you" on her
That's
eyelids.
just a random gag.
Who else were you gonna say?
Well, the 2 government guys who show up at the end.
Yeah.
I mean, they're there,
They're
sure.
worthless too. They might as well have "love you" written on their eyelids too. Yeah, I mean, I think that you guys mentioned all of them. I really liked Marion in this. I liked, Sal is always fun, and Brody. I was more thinking of what he was going to become later, and like trying to reconcile it with like in this, because in this movie at the beginning he says, 5 years ago I would be trying to do this myself, and then I think about Last Crusade where he's just a bumbling idiot. Like, you would have been dead in minutes, old man. So, but yeah, I like the 3 of them for sure. I think that they take home the most of the credit for supporting characters. I'm going to give them 1.
Although it was a villain, I'm going to bring it up now. Nazi Monkey.
I was going to say that too.
Nazi Monkey.
I was going to mention
Nazi Monkey.
Yeah.
Like, I laughed, and I've seen this movie many times in my life. I don't think I've ever noticed that he gives the salute.
Yeah.
And then the Nazi thug gives the salute back to him, and then realizes that he's returning the salute to a monkey. And it's great. Yeah.
Again, yes, a little random bit of comedy.
I'm going to give it a 1.
Yeah, I think they all work for a 1.
Okay, and
It's on to me, I believe.
is it? Yes.
With dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So, again, it's the pulpy, actiony dialogue that you expect and have come to know and perhaps love, or at least tolerate. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not stand out. There's some couple of good things, like some jokey things, some more serious things, but it all works in service of the story and the world. So I can't, praise it too much, but nor can I disparage it, because I think it's perfectly fine. It's serviceable. It's believable enough, again, within the framework of the story that they're trying to tell. Some of it's over the top, especially, of course, from the villains. But again, that's the sort of shit you would read, would be in the dime store novels where this comes from. So I can't really complain about it too much, but nor say too much about it in general. I think it works fine. I'll probably give it a decent 1.
I'd say there's points that the dialogue is really good.
There's a couple good exchanges, yes.
But there are points, and I will definitely say this, there are points where it is cringy, and that's one of the things that we have always on this show said that is a real big mark against dialogue.
But just to me, it's not as cringy as probably you're finding it, so go on.
But what was do you remember what part it was where I was like, who wrote this?
Yeah. It was earlier on, I believe.
But I don't remember what it was. But there was a part where, I couldn't believe that Spielberg had filmed the scene with the dialogue as it was, and I don't know if I'm going to give it a 1.
I can see if you
I'm leaning towards a 0 right now. What are you thinking?
I'm leaning towards a 0 too, because it's a weird division you have. Scott, I understand completely where you're coming from. You're looking at the source material that this came from, and
how it matches.
How it matches, and you're absolutely right. This is the old serials that came before proper movies back in the day. I could see this on Flash Gordon level of dialogue. Problem is, I can also compare this against the AFI list because this is on.
That's fair. Yeah,
and
it's fair angle.
This is There's a lot of dialogue I remember and love from this, but I think I love it because
Of
I
nostalgia.
grew up on it.
Yeah.
And if I went in completely fresh, I might judge it even more.
Yeah.
So
I feel you.
I think I'm going to lean towards a very soft 0, but it's nonetheless a 0.
I think I'm sticking with a 1, but it'll be like the other side of the fence, like a very soft 1, because it's, like I said, made my point, it's serviceable enough within its own framework. But I agree, like, I see what you guys mean, yeah. It's not fucking, like, blowing your mind or stand out or, like, Sorkin-esque, as Steve-O might like to say. But it's there.
I wouldn't say that unless it was Sorkin-esque.
It's there and it's fine.
I think I'm gonna.
But I can totally see you guys sticking with 0s.
I think I'm gonna stay with a 0 on this. It's just, like I said, there are parts where it's good, and there are parts where it's pretty damn good actually. Like there's good exchanges that happen, but
not enough to outweigh.
For going against other movies on the AFI Top 100 list, which you just mentioned, which is a good point. This is nowhere near those. In fact, I would say, and I know I hate to keep bringing it up, but like The Last Crusade does a lot better job with dialogue, making it snappy and witty, and like I think they
When's
just
the last time you saw that?
about a year ago.
It's on a lot, so I catch parts of it.
Dude,
a lot.
it's
Versus
great.
Raiders,
I still quote that movie all the time, but this one just was on a lesser scale.
It's an
I
earlier
think.
iteration, so I think, like you said, I think one of you mentioned maybe in plot that they clearly had time to sort of polish it between this one and the next one, and especially Last Crusade.
Yeah,
But like, given for what it is in this one, the first one, I'm still sticking with the a soft 1. But I see your soft 0s as well, and makes sense. I think you can truly go either way, as is evident by what we just did.
Yeah.
Okay. Steven, style.
All right. So this is an interesting one as well. I like the style of this movie, especially like I like the cinematography. I think that it's not Spielberg's best work, but in terms of getting the shots that he wanted and things like that,
No Bridge of Spies.
it's oh god, stop it.
Thankfully, it's not the British.
But it's pretty good. Obviously, John Williams is a mastermind at creating the perfect score. I would give it a 1 just for that.
Yeah. I mean, it would be a funny experiment. Sorry to interrupt, but to try to watch the movie without this, with the score removed, it would be noticeably worse.
I'm wondering if there's any movie that John Williams has ever scored that I would give a 0 to style. I doubt it. But I mean, I'm not going to say too much more on it. It's good, and it's like it sets the, like you said, it sets up what indie is. The hat, the whip, the whole ensemble, and that is just a strong, point for style. So I'm gonna stick with that for now. I'll let you guys go.
The opening scene, which was really cool, looks like Legends of the Hidden Temple.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
It is. It
Like I said,
there are parts that I feel like he's running through the Universal Studios
Yeah.
with like, or when they escape the Well of Souls, it's like running through. Oh, Marion, you ran into a haunted house.
Yeah.
yeah.
There's cool shots. The use of his silhouette is fantastic in this.
Mhm.
Agreed.
If it wasn't, the fight scenes are awful.
They're bad.
Though noticeably lackluster, we'll say, in retrospect.
All of this is going to John Williams because he makes it work. And I think that I would have scored this much lower if it wasn't for the soundtrack.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you have to give him a huge amount of credit. Again, it's part of the culture zeitgeist, like, dun, 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 everyone fucking knows that riff because of that. So, but I still think, like, as the cinematography itself still works, like, it's, again, I keep harping on this, but because it is set up from the origin to source material, and it's all, like, epic openings, swooping shots of the desert, and, of course, the transitions when they're on a plane, and then you see the map, like, that's a very famous thing.
Yeah.
Like, but the shots themselves, I mean, it's Spielberg, so it's not like it sucks. I don't think I can, in all good faith, give this a 0, but yeah, a lot of the credit, a huge amount of it will go to the score. But it also, because it matches with the shots and the action and what's happening in the plot, too.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't be like, yes, the fight scenes were noticeably, like, like fucking like old Western shit.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, like that sort of, like I said, the veneer sort of peels back a bit there. But overall, I think it's perfectly fine for a solid 1 for style for me.
Okay, on to recommendation. I can't believe I'm going to say this. I don't recommend it. I don't think it held up. If you're a young kid who you shouldn't be watching the show anyway,
or do
Indiana Jones, cool, but I think there are better movies out there nowadays for young kids to like. I think like Guardians of the Galaxy kind of
can fill that
much
spot. Yeah.
like it has that awesomeness and sense of adventure. I think that time has not been kind to this film, and I'm going to give it a 0.
It's tough because like at the outset I was going to be like, yeah, of course I recommend it. It's still fine. But now having talked it out and like again trying to view it more objectively than versus our youthful memories of how awesome it was. Like here's the thing, right? Should it be on the AFI list? Maybe. Should it be where it is? I think it should be much further back if it's going to be on it. And also compared to the other films in the franchise, I think it's better than Temple of Doom, but not better than Last Crusade. So like that might be a bit unfair on this question, but it's tough because I'm going to end up giving like I probably just gave it an 8 or something, but now you might have convinced me that I shouldn't recommend it. So I'm going to hold off. I'm still debating in my mind. I'm going to see what you got to say about it, Steve.
Steve, can I just for a second? Because I want to make a comment on what you said. I think that for what this movie did for the history of film, it should be on the AFI, but that doesn't necessarily make it a great...
And you're right. And we've said that before about previous films, so I'm going to hold off final judgment, but I'll hear Steve-O's take on it.
Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah, this movie did a lot for, action movies in general, and you can see its influence in a lot of stuff that's come since. I will probably give it a recommendation because it's still a strong movie. It's not and
not like it sucks, like we said. Yeah,
yeah. It's
right.
It's just not the greatest thing in the world, like I thought it was.
Especially
for like point, I will say that you're right. Like there are movies since then that I would prefer to watch
probably surpassed
over.
It. Yeah.
And they filled the
Over
same
this
role.
one at this point. Even Last Crusade in the same series I would rather watch. But it's the one that kicked it all off. It's the one that made Indiana Jones this huge pillar of like the action film community.
Sure.
And I think that just in terms of that, it's worth a watch. Especially if you're interested in film at all, or if you're interested in the genre, or you want to know why action movies are these
how
action blockbusters are such huge hits every summer. That like this is a huge part of the reason, and it's worth it for the history. And it's not like it's a fucking bad experience watching it either. It's just. It's just a good movie. It's not like it's not like oh, this is brilliant. I have to watch it once a year or anything like that. But yeah, go check it out.
All right, I think I'm giving it the softest of all ones ever. At the end of the day, yeah, I'll still recommend it, even though everything you said, like is completely valid for me at least. I'm more leaning towards it. But you made a good point at the end yourself there, Steve-O. Like, yeah, it's not like it sucks. It's still probably worth a watch. Just that I probably won't watch it again now for a long, long time. Because we just did it for this review, and that's basically the only reason. But again, it's tough because of where it stands in the cultural zeitgeist, as I mentioned. Mm-hmm. So I still think, like I said, softest of all ones, but I will at the end of the day say, yeah, it's still, Raiders is still worth it to watch. Yeah. You can still enjoy it.
Well, this is the last time I'm probably ever seeing it, but I'll give it the scores.
Fair enough. Well, where does it leave us? Yeah.
Scott gave it the highest score with an 8.
Yeah.
Stephen gave it the middling 7. I give it a 6, meaning a 7 overall.
I think that's fucking fine.
Yeah. Steve Spielberg get a C for your effort.
It's going to be above average, and you can give it credit for what it did, but things have surpassed it, as you guys mentioned, so I think we can agree upon that, but we can also agree that it still stands as is, roughly.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I have nothing more to say. I'm Jonathan Emanzer here with Stephen Ramosi.
Off to rob another grave.
And Scott Thurlow.
And off to get chased by a boulder. Good night. See you next time.
Editing and engineering by Stephen Ramosi. Music by Christopher Morgan. Check us out on YouTube and iTunes for the shows, and on Facebook and Twitter for updates.